The Cocktail Guru presents Cocktail Commentary with Jeffrey Pogash. Sit back and enjoy the story of Smirnoff and the Moscow Mule.
This is the story of one of the most successful marketing campaigns in the history of the cocktail and spirits industry. Unless you've been living on another planet, anyone who drinks cocktails knows that vodka is one of the most popular spirits in the world. Vodka is everywhere, but this was not always the case. I'm certain that most people listening to or watching cocktail commentary have no idea whatsoever that vodka was once unknown in the United States, virtually non-existent. So how did we find ourselves in the middle of a vodka boom for the past 40 years or so? The tremendous rise in popularity of vodka can be attributed to one company and one brand. The company was Hubline and Brother, and the brand was Smirnoff. Yes, I said Smirnoff. Most of us know this vodka. Originally, it was a Russian brand called Smirnoff with a V at the end, but eventually it became an American brand. And here is the how and why. Once upon a time, there was a man by the name of John Martin, president of Hubline, an importing company that was also a producer of spirits, located in Hartford, Connecticut. The year is 1939. World War II was just beginning, and Martin is approached by a Russian man who has a curious proposition. He held the secret recipe from a family in Russia known for its vodka, Smirnoff. The man was Rudolf Kunit, a supplier of grain to the Smirnoffs in Russia. Coincidentally, Kunit had emigrated to the U.S. and was producing and selling the vodka in Bethel, Connecticut. But things were not going so well for him. He was selling a mere 6,000 cases, and Kunit was running out of money. So he approached John Martin and offered to sell his vodka brand and its recipe for $14,000, the equivalent of about $310,000 today. The deal was sealed. Even though Hubline was a manufacturer of spirits, Martin's purchase did not meet with cheers. The executives at Hubline called it Martin's folly. After all, post-Prohibition America was drinking whiskey and gin. Nobody in this country knew anything about vodka, but that was about to change. Keep in mind that Prohibition was difficult for Hubline and for all importers and producers of wine and spirits. What kept Hubline alive during these terrible 13 years was one product. Brace yourselves. A1 steak sauce. That's right, the stuff that you slather all over steak. That's what kept the company alive. Nobody knew if wine and spirit sales would ever return to pre-Prohibition levels. But the forward-thinking visionary that was John Martin was not deterred. He hunkered down and began creating a marketing and advertising campaign that would change the face of the spirits industry and our drinking habits. So exactly what did he do? Saddled with a product that, unlike whiskey, is unaged, there are no old casks involved, a bit harsher to the palate, colorless and odorless, relatively speaking, and was considered typically Russian or Polish, Martin and his team began experimenting with Smirnoff as a spirit that could be enjoyed when blended into mixed drinks. They even went so far as to sell Smirnoff as, brace yourselves once again, white whiskey. That's right. Martin had to roll up his sleeves, spend lots of money, and use his ingenuity to ingratiate Smirnoff into the hearts and minds of the American public, like whiskey and gin had succeeded in doing. In the 1940s, Hubline revved up its campaign, explaining in brochures and ads that because, quote, it's colorless and delicate in flavor and aroma, Smirnoff will mix perfectly and lose itself in the other ingredients. It leaves little aftertaste and afterbreath. This was a not-so-subtle attempt to get gin and whiskey drinkers to switch to vodka. Here's another quote. Unlike gin, Smirnoff will never reveal to the outside world that you are drinking alcohol. Smirnoff vodka is often preferred in mixed drinks, where gin was customarily used. This ad inspired the tagline, which we all know, Smirnoff leaves you breathless. That was used from the 1950s through the end of the 1970s. The print campaign and slogan was the brainchild of advertising executive Milton Goodman and appeared in most major magazines of the era, including Life, Look, Playboy, Time, and the New Yorker. To put this mixability theory to a practical test, Martin set about creating a signature cocktail for Smirnoff. Just 2 years after the brand was acquired, this was accomplished. In 1941, he met with the owner of a tavern in Los Angeles called Cock and Bull. Jack Morgan had a boatload of a brew that he had trouble selling. It was called ginger beer. Aha, said John Martin. Maybe, just maybe, if we combine Smirnoff vodka with some ginger beer and ice and a wedge of lime, we might have a drink that could solve both problems. As the story goes, and to be perfectly candid, it was the bartender at Cock and Bull who came up with the recipe, but no one really knows for sure exactly who invented the drink. What we do know is that it seems to have been a joint effort which definitely helped John Martin to sell more Smirnoff and Jack Morgan to unload the supply of homemade ginger beer that he had produced. But there is an essential element to this story that we have not yet mentioned. Her name is Sophie Berezinski. Sophie emigrated from Russia, where else, with 2,000 copper mugs in tow that she had designed and made in her father's shop in the old country. She managed to sell a certain quantity of them to the Cock and Bull, so Jack Morgan was looking to create a drink to fit the mug. Lo and behold, the Moscow Mule was born. Good timing for Sophie, Jack, and John. Remarkably, Sophie's family continues the tradition, so you too can own a piece of history when you buy the original Moscow Mule cups from the very company that Sophie created back in the 1930s. As a history buff, I find it very exciting that the tradition continues to this day. Cheers. That's good. And now, my friends, you know the rest of the story.